The lunar nodes is the theme of today's class. And I'm really excited to talk about this theme. As many of you know, the lunar nodes hold a very, very special place in my heart. And it's really a very, very powerful and important point in astrology as well, as you're going to see in just a second. Now, I want to help you understand what the lunar nodes are. First of all, we're going to determine what they are astronomically, okay? It's very important to get that out of the way. I know a lot of you hear that it's some point of intersection of something and something, but I really want you to leave this class without any question on what it is. So let's determine that first. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the interpretive part of the lunar nodes. Now, when I talk about this part, I want you to keep in mind the importance of the lunar nodes in astrology, both the North Node and the South Node. Now, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story of how I came into the North Node and the South Node, and really how that was the starting point, the first thing that got me fired up about taking astrology to the next level. It really was an experience that I had with the nodes. I'm going to share that with you. But I primarily want you to not take my word for it. I want you, if you have any question, go to the reviews of my page on Facebook, the business page, where you will find person after person after person after person who is expressing how deeply moved they have been with the reading they had with me, with my work. I will tell you that the main reason they feel this way is because of the focus and the emphasis that I give on their lunar nodes, their nodal placements, the North Node and the South Node. This is a secret of mine that I'm sharing with you today, so you can understand the power and the importance that the lunar nodes have in astrology. Now, as you're going to see, I never took on a specific teaching or even evolutionary astrology. I mean, I bought all the CDs of Jeff Green and all the books that I can find and everything, and I haven't gone through one yet. So I have a general idea. I've heard bits and pieces here and there of, lunar nodes and the skip step and, when something is squaring the nodes and the T-square and things like that. But I can't tell you that I adopt their practice with the lunar nodes because I don't even really fully know how they use it. I do know that, well, when I tell my story with it, you'll understand a little bit better why, but I will tell you that I have found my way of using the lunar nodes, of course, based on, the standard uses for the nodes, interpretations as well. But through the years that I have just had hundreds of experiences in studying people's charts, I've come to use the North Node and the South Node as the key points that hold a chart together. And to me, the North Node and the South Node are really the primary focus of why someone is even here. So, these, if you will, become almost like the pointers of a clock. Let's say, obviously, they're always going to be opposite to each other, but they're the main pointers of the chart that are just pointing to the key specific locations. And then you have the second, little arm of the clock, and imagine you have a bunch of other little seconds and other little arms, and those are all the planets and the sun and the moon and all the special points in your chart, but they're actually all just working to bring about the story of the North Node and the South Node. And that is my secret in astrology, and that's why my readings are so profound and so impactful to people. When I share with you a little bit about the interpretation of the nodes, you're going to understand why. But I do want to take this beginning section of this class to help you understand how important the lunar nodes are in astrology. As you're going to see, the lunar nodes, they are what hold your script here. The lunar nodes are really, at the end of the day, the reason why you have a freaking sun in Aries and a moon in Capricorn and so and everything else. They're all just players really helping to bring about the agenda or the theme of the nodes. And of course, I have, through the years and through, my little bits and pieces here and there of other astrologers that I respect, I have a little package that I use specifically for determining that soul intention, that soul urge, that soul direction. So I do use the outer planets in a specific way, especially Pluto. I use the moon as well as the bridge. It's the first place where we start having that emotional expression, which is really actually coming from much deeper stories. And that's a whole other style and approach that I use as a focus for my readings, which I will gather into one specific class and create a class just for that. Okay, so it's not just the lunar nodes that I use. The lunar nodes are the starting point. They are really that, that foundation that holds the rest of the journey together. But then there are other components that are, not based necessarily on time and space, not based on this linear human journey. They're based on the soul agenda, your family lineage, your genetics, your DNA, and so forth, your subconscious memory, your cellular memory. And these belong to another group, okay? We go adding more planets to the picture here and more important pieces. But it all begins with the nodes, okay? So now that you understand how important the lunar nodes are in astrology, to me specifically, that's like the basis of all my readings. And I'll tell you, if you read those reviews, you'll see that what I'm doing works. There's a reason why, my readings are booked out months in advance and all that. People, at the end of the day, they will resonate with their north node and south node. At the end of the day, this is a very, very powerful and deep place in astrology. So let's leave it be for now. There's little bugs here. Let's let that be for now, and let's go a little bit to the astronomy of what the lunar nodes are, okay? So the lunar nodes in astrology, they're not celestial bodies. They're points of intersection. And you're going to see in astrology that there are many of these points in the sky, these like symbolic, vortexes, I guess you could say. They're either produced by points in a planetary or celestial body's orbit, or they will be represented by the intersection of two celestial bodies. You're going to see that there's a lot of that in astrology. So the lunar nodes are one of these points, but it's a very significant one because it has to do with the sun and the moon's orbit. Now, what most people hear out there, which, it is true to a certain extent, but this is the basic, here you have the sun's orbit, and here you have the moon's orbit. Here you have the sun, and here you have the moon. Let's put the moon with a slant, because there is a slight slant to the moon's orbit, and this slant over here is about a 5 degrees slant. It's not very much, but it's enough to create this difference here, and it creates this point of intersection, okay? Always, always, always opposite to each other, always. So what happens is that, first of all, we know that the sun doesn't have an orbit, okay? So when I talk about the sun's orbit, I'm always referring to the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun. It's the motion that we, from our perspective on Earth, right, when we look up at the sky, we see what? We do see the sun moving. From our perspective, the sun is moving. So it's this, when we say the ecliptic, or when we say the sun's path, that's what it is. It's the apparent path of the sun. Now, we also know that the moon revolves around the Earth, correct? Right? The Earth has like this rotation like this that we already saw in another class around the sun. Now, I don't want to get too complicated here, but obviously some people are going to be asking, why is this the path of the moon with the sun when the moon is only revolving around the Earth? Well, for this, I've made this other diagram over here. It's a little bit better. Now, it's not perfect, but it's a little bit better. So here we have, number one, we have the sun, the sun's apparent path, which is called the ecliptic. This is a very important thing to remember in astrology. We use the ecliptic a lot for many different calculations. So very important to remember the ecliptic. Now, here we have the Earth, right? And we have the moon that revolves around the Earth. Here we have now the projected out into space orbit of the moon around the Earth, okay? The projected into space moon's orbit around the Earth. And this projection over here will give us these 2 points of intersection. This green one here being the North Node, right? Because here we have the moon ascending. And then when the moon descends, it creates the South Node. Here we have it, okay? So the wobble of the moon, so the moon is unstable in its orbit. It's very much influenced by the Earth and the gravity of the Earth as well. And there's a lot of other factors that creates the orbit of the moon is not a perfectly round or even stable one. There is a slight wobble. And this wobble is what gives the sometimes retrograde and direct effect in the lunar nodes. Sometimes you'll see when you're looking up at a chart in astrology, and you'll see the lunar nodes retrograde or direct. There is no astrologer that I know of that actually works with interpretations for that. If there are, please let me know. It's definitely not a very common theme, and astrologers don't seem to take that into consideration very much. So there's little study around that. And I also think that because of the instability of the moon, and the moon is known for being so fluctuating and unstable, even in its expressions, that's why it rules emotions. We have this factor of instability also with the moon, which is portrayed by the retrograde and direct. But especially because of that factor, I wouldn't take that into consideration so deeply, at least not at this point. We don't really see much of a difference, but it will mean that sometimes it'll stay a little bit longer in a certain degree, go back and forth. You have a retrograde direct. So this is just to explain to you why you will see sometimes the retrograde and direct, and not to worry about that, okay? This is due to the wobble of the moon. The moon is unstable, a little bit, wobble, wobble, wobble around the Earth. But then if we project this trajectory of the moon around the Earth and we project it out into space, we will have this correlation here, this difference of 5-degree orbit. We know that this orbit is actually the Earth, but then the moon around the Earth has a little tilt as well. So it creates this 5-degree difference over here. And that is enough to create 2 points of intersection. And these 2 points of intersection become the North Node and the South Node. The North Node and the South Node over here. Now, the nodes of the moon, these points over here of intersection also move. So what happens is that this point of intersection between the ecliptic and the moon's orbit, this point of intersection that we call the North Node and the South Node, due to the rotation of the moon and the wobble and all of that, it also moves. It moves around the zodiac covering all the signs. And this movement is very, very significant. Now, it takes about a year and a half for the lunar nodes in the sky to change signs. About a year and a half, about 18 months. And about 18 years for them to do a whole complete revolution and return to that exact same placement. So I wrote it over here. A draconic or nodal return, as we call it. Have you ever heard of this term, especially the nodal return? Maybe some of you have heard this term before, nodal return. It's a very, very significant time in our lives. So you can see here that this occurs about every 18 and a half years of our life. About every 18 and a half years of our life, we have what we call nodal return. And about every 18 months, the nodes will change signs. We all go through in our lives every 18 and so years of our life. We have a nodal return. Let's say that you were born with the North Node at 17 degrees Aries, okay? And then, of course, that would put your South Node at 17 degrees Libra. So here we have someone that was born with the North Node in Aries at 17 degrees Aries, and the South Node would automatically be at 17 degrees Libra. Well, it takes about 18 years for this point in the sky that I told you about to travel, this point of intersection, to travel all throughout the zodiac and come back to its original place as it was when you were born, about every 18 years. When this happens, when you have a nodal return, anybody in their lives, this marks a very significant point where the soul is completing a cycle of its original intention of coming here. Very important to remember. More on that soon. If this over here takes about 18 years to happen, this whole revolution, there's another significant point, which is when it's halfway through, and this is about every 9 years, okay? Well, not every 9 years, 9 years after this point over here. So if you just had your, nodal return, let's say last year, you can count 9 years from that. You're going to be having a reverse nodal return. And that's literally when you're in half that time of the cycle of the soul's original intention. And the reverse nodal return that happened 9 years after the nodal return is another very powerful time, because it's like the soul is having a realignment in that half of that cycle of the soul's original intention. So it is a time where a lot can be shaken and stirred in our lives. A lot of things can happen at once. A lot of things can leave. A lot of things can come. It all depends with the rest of the cycles and how the other planets are interacting with your chart. But it usually is a time that marks a very significant turning point in the person's life, the reverse nodal return. But the nodal return is always a time where the soul's original intention begins anew, on a new level, almost like in an octave higher. And when you're having a nodal return, this speaks of a time in your life. Think of a Saturn return. Have you ever heard of a Saturn return? For those of you that have heard, the Saturn return is a time where we literally have to grow up. Whether we like it or not, this is a time of maturity, of responsibility. We start having reality checks with the world, with the real world out there, and having responsibilities and duties and paying our taxes, and like things just happen in our life to make us grow up. Even if it's marriage, for example, or having your first child, or for everyone's different, but it's a turning point of maturity in the person's life, usually accompanied by some sort of a extra work, responsibility, and some reality checks as well. And that's why the Saturn return is often very feared and dreaded. Who likes to grow up, right? But it does teach us wisdom and maturity. Now, the nodal return is kind of similar to a Saturn return, except that it's for the soul. So whereas a Saturn return is more of like your responsibilities as a citizen, as a human being, as a new father, a new mother, the owner of your own business, all these things that require a level of maturity in an adult. Saturn returns, by the way, they happen around every 27 to 30 years of age. It depends on the person, okay? This is the time where most people, that's the first Saturn return, most people really struggle during that time of their life. It's usually a very sobering, serious time of the person's life. Only look at your chart to know exactly when it was. But then about every 18 plus years, we have the nodal return, which is a time of growing up from the soul. So this is even more sobering than the Saturn return, because this is like the whole reason for why you're here. And when the nodal return comes in someone's life, it's like, what have you done these last 2 decades with the cycle, that you're holding here, the reason why you're here, your soul's intention. I always like to say that when it comes to the North Node, especially because the North Node is the soul's intention, I always say in my readings that, like, it's not even really, to me, I don't think, like, it's not even really about the person you marry or the school you go to or how many kids you have. Like, yes, some of those things are part of soul agreements and, if you want to call it fate or destiny, which are really key turning points of your life to align you with the soul's direction. But at the end of the day, it's not even so much about that as much as it is about, are you following the theme that your soul's here to experience? Because if you're not, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you marry, or it doesn't matter which job you have or how many children you have. If you are not aligned with your soul's intention, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled. Just is what it is. I'm talking about the soul's original intention. And I will tell you, like, the nodes are so powerful. Just having a Mars and Gemini moment here, getting a little distracted, but it's something I think you're going to appreciate to hear. I've done charts for people, okay, that I'll use one as an example here, okay? It's hard to generalize this theme, but I had this one woman come to me about some big names out there that she was putting into justice and trial for a lot of underground activity that is very, 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 very dark and perverted in nature. And this woman came to me wanting to know if she should go forward with these trials. And these are some big names out there that most people know. Needless to say, sometimes I get each case to work with and I'm like, whoa, is this really happening? Well, this was one of them. And I explained to her that I didn't really, I don't necessarily specialize in that sort of branch of astrology and using it to do investigative work and corruption and things like that. But she insisted, and she was like, you're the only astrologer I trust. I don't care what, how your approach is. Because I told her, I said, look, my approach is from the soul. Like, I'm not here to tell you you're going to win, you're not going to win. Like, my approach is from the soul. And she said, do it. Well, I did. And it was fascinating for me. It was a really incredible experience, actually, to work. And she came back actually for a second reading a couple months later on the same theme. It was just a very fascinating experience. But to me, what was even more fascinating was, as an astrologer, to be able to study their charts in correlation with who they are and what they're doing here. And it was so clear in their charts that they were following their soul intention, even in their darkness and their perversion and all of that. And I couldn't help it but point it out also to this woman, which I know was, bless her soul, it wasn't easy for her to hear, obviously, after everything that they've done and just so much going on, so much. I'm not going to get too into it, but for her to hear me talk about how, you know, their soul is here to experience a good portion of this for whatever reason, you know, I'm sure it was like her cup of tea to hear that, but I couldn't help but notice the strength in the message of what their soul, you know, connected. For example, let's say Black Moon Lilith. Okay, how do you interpret someone who has, for example, I'm not saying this person has it, but for example, a North Node conjunct the Black Moon Lilith? This is where astrology becomes so fascinating to me, because when I started learning astrology, I just simply could not judge people the way that I used to before. It helped me to have so much compassion for people's paths. Because who am I? Who am I to question what their soul's intention is of being here? This all belongs to a much greater mechanism, which none of us has an idea of. We may think we do, and we may have glimpses of, but it's such an orchestrated piece here. And when we understand through astrology how this works, we just kind of get back in our seat and like just watch the show, because there's something very spectacular going on here. And when the lunar nodes, when you work with the lunar nodes in this way, you start to see everybody in your life on a very different level. Your family, your siblings, your co-workers, your husbands, your wives, your partners, your children. Your children. I'm pausing over here because I'm remembering another case of a mother who struggled a lot with her son. Struggled a lot. Not going to get into details. Very young son, young mother as well. And this son would sometimes say to the mother that he was married to her, or that he is married to her. When I looked at this chart, this mother's chart, she had a very incredible karmic connection between her son that dated to past lives, and Juno, right there. Relationships, partnerships, the significant other. Now, I'm not going to get into details with what it was that was connected with how, because then we're going to start incorporating other elements of this. But what I'm telling you is that this works. And the North Node and the South Node are extremely powerful points in someone's chart. Not only astronomically, we're talking about the sun and the moon's orbit, which really is, in astrology, the foundation of a chart is the sun, the moon, and the rising. And you have the sun, where the one that gives birth to the whole solar system. And you have the moon, which is the birth of the emotional nature. This is where spirit comes in, through the emotions. You have the king and the queen, the two pillars in astrology, and the point of intersection where they meet in the sky. This becomes a very, very powerful place in astrology. I was in a beach house, and someone there just happened to have a copy of an astrology book. And I was just wanting to soak up any information that I could about astrology. I was so fascinated by it. And, I was like, yeah, sure, let me read this book. This is an astrology book. Let me see what they have to say. So I got the book. I was there, didn't have much to do. We were on vacation, summer house. I was in front of the ocean, had plenty of time in my hands, got this astrology book, and this was the book that I read. Jan Spiller, Astrology for the Soul. Now, this book has been rewritten or repackaged, and there's a different cover to it, okay? But I think it's the same title. And I cannot recommend this book enough for anybody who wants to understand the lunar nodes. And I can even sit here and talk to you and tell you what the lunar nodes in each one of the houses mean, but it wouldn't even come close to doing the subject justice of what they really are. It's one thing to sit here and talk to you about what planet Mars and all the houses means, or maybe even the sun, or maybe even the moon and all the houses means. But when we are talking about the most important and significant point in astrology to me, the lunar nodes, this is the heart and soul of why you're here. I'm not going to sit here and just spout off to you what they mean in each house, but instead I'm going to actually go a step further, and I'm going to recommend that you buy this book. If you buy this book and have this book as a starting point for the beginners out there of your learning astrology, I'm telling you, your work with astrology is going to take a very profound level. Now, just so you won't be here thinking, oh yeah, Raquel thinks it's such an important part of astrology, or it's just your interpretation. That's not true. The lunar nodes have always been considered extremely important parts in astrology. So much so that even the eclipses that have huge significance and always have throughout thousands of years, there's always been significance in eclipses. Eclipses are nothing more, nothing less than new moons and full moons that happen near the nodes, near where the north node and where the south node is. This happens, about 4 to 6 times a year. So the lunar nodes have always been considered a very, very, very powerful point in the sky. And as a matter of fact, for example, even the Greek Roman astrologers, they would assign mathematical values to all the planets in astrology based on their importance, their significance in astrology. And the lunar nodes to them was what had the highest mathematical value. They assigned the highest mathematical value to the lunar nodes, and for a reason. So the lunar nodes are just a really highly significant point, period. And I'm sharing with you my secret in astrology and behind my work. And I'm sharing with you my experience with it and my interpretation as well, the flavor of my interpretation, of course, with the foundations on, the real studies and all of that. But I do want to encourage you to pursue your, the meaning and the associations and the interpretations that resonate with you at the end of the day the most, because those are going to be the ones that speak to you. However, know that the lunar nodes are very important in astrology, without exception, regardless of what nuance or what flavor you want to use to interpret them or to use them in your work with astrology. Now, this book over here talks about the North Node and the South Node throughout all of the signs of the zodiac. All of the signs. And I will tell you that I do have a few other books on the nodes. There are a few other books on the nodes. I'm not going to, it's okay. We don't have to say names, and we don't have to. And while they're all good, nothing comes close. Nothing beats this book over here. Bless this woman, Jan Spiller. She just recently passed away too. Bless her heart. What a contribution that she left to this world and to the astrology community with this book. This is superb. This is a masterpiece. If you don't have any other book in astrology but this one, you have a solid starting point. And if you don't have any other books on the lunar nodes but you get this one, you are really, really setting yourself up for a solid and deep astrology practice. So what happened? I got this book and I saw, okay, this is about the lunar nodes in the 12 houses. Well, in the signs, and I will address the houses as well very shortly. But I said, okay, well, what's the first step here? Let's look at mine. So I went and I checked out mine. I have a natal North Node in Leo and South Node in Aquarius. And you'll see that this book is quite thick. She goes very in depth on each sign, a little too much. It's almost a little hard to stay until the end, in one sitting at least, because it's a lot. She goes really in depth. And I will tell you that when I read my interpretation for my Leo North Node and South Node in Aquarius, I was bawling my eyes out. I was crying. I cried from beginning to end. I cried so many times that I felt like I just went through the deepest energy surgery, if you will. I just had the most intense psychological, psychiatric session of my life. I was sobbing. I did not have any words to convey how deeply, profoundly touched I was, and shaken as well with the message and how deeply it resonated with me. Not just how deeply it resonated with me, but worse yet, it described my exact life story. And the reason why I said worse yet is because after I read that, I realized that I was still living in my South Node. I realized that everything I had been running away from in my life was exactly what my soul was here to experience. And it was such a big wake-up call for me. Not only did I find the most profound explanation of my entire journey in a nutshell, based on just 2 points in astrology, but I also was made aware exactly what I was supposed to be focusing on, which, sad to say at that point, was exactly everything I was running away from. And when I had that experience, it was so profound that the next day I started giving this book to other people for them to read. And I said, you have to read your sign. This changed my life. You have to start going around meeting people. And several people there at that vacation, at that beach house, they actually read it and they were deeply moved as well. Not as much as I was, but definitely to the point of tears. And they were very, very deeply, profoundly moved at the message as well, how deeply it spoke to them. That not only created a massive turning point in my life where I was all of a sudden like, okay, now I'm going to be held accountable because now I know better. It's like, okay, what am I going to do now? But that was also the turning point where I decided that I wanted to help other people understand their nodal placement. And I wanted to help them have that profound effect that I experienced when I read this book. And if any of you watching this have had a session with me, especially a natal chart session, which is where we dive into your blueprint, you know what I'm talking about. And while it's not the same as getting this book and reading through your entire sign placement, that goes very in depth. But my sessions are primarily based on this. And then we look at your chart and how it relates to ultimately what you're here for. And you know this, and that's why people state over and over again how amazed they were at how profound the reading with me was in the reviews. And it's not because, I'm such an intuitive or I'm so this or so that, but it's because I understand what the lunar nodes are saying and how the rest of the chart is working with that. So to me, the lunar nodes, they really set the foundation for your experience here as a human being. And then the rest of your chart, the placement of your Mars and your Venus and everything else, it's actually going to be contributing, either supporting or, standing in the way, which actually contributes at the end. It's where you have growth. But each in their own way, you have the expressions of the other planets, but that are all ultimately working together with the nodes. So the North Node in astrology, I will tell you, this part now we're going to talk about what it means. And at the end of the day, yes, there are more intricate ways that we can start adding more information and finding more things. There's a whole segment that we're going to explore in other and future classes in the mentorship program, my private mentorship program, we're going to have some classes that we're going to address more intricate ways of using the nodes. But I will tell you that the North Node in astrology ultimately points to where we are heading as a soul. And the South Node points to where we're coming from as a soul. Now, whether you believe in past lives or not, that doesn't matter. I'm inviting you to move beyond labels, beyond names, beyond concepts, because we know that ultimately even time is an illusion. From our perspective, we see it as one way. So past, present, future. I'm inviting you to transcend beyond that. And just for the sake of conveying a message, I have to use words. And so I use past lives, what we call past lives, or our idea of past lives. Now, in my sessions, I say you can substitute that for genetic memory, for example, cellular memory due to your ancestry. It's very normal. This is scientifically based that we carry predispositions of our parents for, energy levels, mood levels, even certain attributes physically, genetically, emotionally as well. We are predisposed to certain conditions based on our genetic memory. So if you want to look at it that way, if that's more scientific based, then look at it that way. But there is some sort of a subconscious memory that we carry here, a pattern that we carry here that causes us to have same, looks as our parents, or same habits or mannerisms, or maybe even more than that. Maybe it's part of a soul story, a past life, or some sort of a cellular memory that we are carrying with us in this lifetime. So I like to use past lives just to keep it short and simple. Think of it however you want. But ultimately, at the heart and soul of the South Node, because remember, you can have all your prettied up, filtered interpretations based on other people's books, other people's works. It's all amazing. They're all valid. Please find what suits you best. But the South Node is a portal, if you will. Think of it as a vortex. It's a portal where, been there, done that. People and situations come through there. This is familiar territory. This is known energy. Okay? This is known energy, whether it's your past lives, whether it's genetic memory, whether it's ancestry, whether it's subconscious memory. It's there. It's stored. It's stored in your subconscious, in your cells. It's there. So I like to say, because I use the term past lives, I like to say that there's a lot of masteries in there as well for us. These are points that as a soul, we're just like, we've experienced so much of it that it can either be too much, which is why we want to, as a soul, experience the other polarity to balance now, or they're just, or they can just mean also points of mastery, things that we're good at, things that come easily for us. And so the South Node is so neglected in astrology that, we fail to give importance to what the South Node really brings to the table in someone's chart. If you look at your South Node by sign, especially the sign that it's in, you're going to see how you naturally have a lot of those attributes in your personality. Let's say, for example, I have a South Node in Aquarius, for example, and I definitely carry a lot of the Aquarius attributes in my personality. There's a lot of stories as well that the sign will bring, and this book is absolutely perfect for helping you understand more about these past life masteries, more of this South Node, been there, done that, things that you've already mastered, things that you're ready to gravitate away from in this life, believe it or not, but they do become points of, let's say, it becomes kind of like a comfort zone for us because it's familiar territory. We've done this already so much. We've experienced so much. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's always good. It could be a lot of trauma in there as well, depending on the person's chart. This is trauma that they're working out through this life. So there are stories and there are themes that have the tendency to be on loop, to be repeating and coming back over and over and over again. It's that theme from the past life that is ready to be concluded. On the other hand, there's also a lot of qualities from that sign that comes naturally to the person. And the qualities from the sign can become a point of strength. It can also be a point of, to work on, let's say if you have an Aries, for example, an Aries South Node, these people can be very strong-willed and very strong and independent in nature. They come from past lives where they were either in some sort of a general or a military position, or a leader, or just someone who had to be very, almost ruthless at its worst. Now, of course, there are Aries South nodes as well, depending on the chart, that is talking about a person who was the one that was persecuted, who was the one that was bullied, and all of that. So there are different ways to interpret it. And that's why this book is a must for anybody who really wants to understand the heart and soul of a natal nodal placement. But the South Node will indicate a part of your life that just comes naturally in your expression. And this is very important because a lot of people, they base a lot of the attributes of someone's personality on the sun, the moon, and the rising. And rightfully so. These are key places in astrology. But I will tell you, don't ignore the North Node. Don't underestimate the South Node, sorry. Don't underestimate the South Node. If you include the South Node to your interpretations, you'll be amazed at how much more information you can bring to the table. So my suggestion is pull up as many people's charts as you can and look at the sign of their North Node, their South Node. The sign that their South Node is in will, for the most part, indicate attributes that are very much a part of their personality. Just by nature, just by sheer virtue of them being here, they bring all these memories, these attributes, these themes into this existence. It's very fascinating, especially if you get this book over here and you can read along. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times even people that in the past I wouldn't get along with, or sometimes even family members, and I'm like, why is this person so difficult? Like, oh. And I look at their South Node and their North Node, and I read their page of the book, and I'm in tears with their lunar node, with their nodal placement, because of the impact that you realize that why they're really here. This is the burdens they carry. This is the aims that their soul needs them to focus on. And this is serious stuff. This is, at the end of the day, so much more important than who I'm going to marry, when am I going to move houses? Like, that's all part of our journey, yeah, but they're all working because of this. And so when I read this over here for people's nodal placements, I have such an incredible amount of compassion for them, and empathy and love for their journey, and understanding the reality of why they're here. And then looking at the rest of their chart, it's so much easier to understand, for example, why they'd have let's say a Mars square Pluto. That's not an easy aspect to have at all. These people can both attract very traumatic, even abusive situations in their life, and depending on the person, they themselves can express similar behaviors in their attitude as well if they're not careful, because it is a very, very powerful aspect to have in astrology. And sometimes when we're dealing with someone and we're just seeing that part of them, it's easy to judge. But when you look at their charts, you're going to be like, whoa, this is a soul living out their evolutionary process here, and wow, I get to see what they have to work with. This is serious, not to be taken lightly, and you really feel their journey. You live their path for a few moments, and it's a very deep experience. So get as many charts as you can. Look at the South Node placement in someone's chart. The sign that it's in is going to add so much information about qualities that are innately a part of the person's personality. And these qualities they can almost be a way to describe the person's nature, along with the sun. If you're able to incorporate aspects of the sun, of the moon, of the rising, it becomes even more whole, right? But including the south node is key and super important to describe someone's nature, someone's personality, because that's their comfort zone from a soul level. These are attributes and things that they've already experienced. Thus, it comes through just naturally as a part of their personality. If you have planets conjunct the south node, oh boy, that is adding a whole new level of stories to it. Not going to get into details now here, but for you more intermediate and advanced astrologers, you can absolutely get the themes of that planet and bring it together with your interpretation of the past lives, masteries, things that these people are naturally good at, or they naturally exude those qualities, because it's themes that is coming back from past life to this life with them. And if it's choosing to do that, it's for a reason. And that's very significant. If there's a planet conjunct south node, very important to take that into consideration, because that planet is coming back to this lifetime for a reason. The stories are coming back for a reason. So they're usually very significant in nature. Another thing that I look at is the house that that planet rules. So let's say, for example, that we're looking at Neptune. Neptune conjunct the south node. Not only we're going to get the attributes of what Neptune means to bring it into the picture, but we're also going to get the Pisces house involved in this as well. There's something with the Pisces house. Let's say that the Pisces house is the seventh house, the house of relationships. This comes into the picture and it becomes a significant and crucial part of the person's past lives, for example. Maybe there are some significant relationships that are very much highlighted in this lifetime that are connected with past connections. So South Node is very important. And the North Node in astrology becomes that unfamiliar territory. The North Node in astrology becomes the other polarity where a soul needs to experience to find that balance of evolution. So we have all these lessons and all these stories and all these the traumas and the gifts and the masteries as depicted by the South Node, right? Over here. And then we have what the soul needs, which is the other balance, which is the unfamiliar territory. This is virgin territory and fertile soil to create and to find growth and expansion and satisfaction in this journey. I cannot stress this enough. This is why my work with astrology is so powerful. It's because I use this so profoundly. Now, to tell you, to finish the story of how, my use of the nodes, I didn't have, my studying with evolutionary astrology or studying with a specific teacher or anything. I had my experience with this book that changed my life. And it touched me so profoundly, that when I started doing readings, I would spend 80% of my time preparing the reading. I would spend reading the person's entire nodal placement and underlining. And you'll see, if you get this book, you'll see that this is not a quick read. Go through one sign, one placement, you'll spend many hours, depending on, how slow or fast you read. But it's not a quick read, especially if you're really assimilating it all. I would underline it, make a list of the key things that I felt that spoke to me the most. You're going to see, because it's so big, it addresses a lot of different angles, and it's not like every single angle is going to apply to you. Okay, there are many different interpretations for each of the signs, but the way that she's able to condense it all and speak of all the different possibilities and potentials within that spectrum is astounding, the way she does it. So I would underline the ones that I found the most significant for that chart, because it also depends a lot with the rest of the chart's placements. So for example, like I was giving the example of an Aries South Node. We could either be talking about someone who was the bully, the aggressor in a past life, or they were the one who was bullied, the one who was martyred, the one who was attacked. And that created a trauma for them. You see the two ends of the polarity here with the Aries? And so this can be determined by the rest of the placements of the chart. You can have a much better idea which one it was. Sometimes it's not fully clear, and this is where a few questions to the client can help clarify that. But for the most part, by looking at the rest of the chart, you can have an idea which one it is. So I would make a list of the ones that I found that were related the most to the person's situation and their story here. And I would spend about 80% of my time preparing the charts only studying this and really sitting with this and feeling this and the chart and the person's journey. And then at the end, I would look at the rest of the chart in relationship to the nodal placement. And then I would present the session. When I started doing this was from the very beginning, and just based on the profound effect that it had on me and my desire to help other people understand their true reason for being here. And again, like the story that I said at the beginning, some people just are here due to some sort of whatever, a soul contract, an agreement, a part of a much greater and intricate evolutionary experience that's happening throughout all of creation that we have no idea of, that for some reason they come here to fulfill a certain role. Like Hitler, for example, like these people that we consider so evil, and obviously they have done really shocking things, but they've really brought the contrast out in this planet. And I truly believe that this planet has been, up until this point, a point of polarity and contrast and duality, as a point of experience for souls, for different souls to come here and experience evolution and growth. And so the contrast and the polarity here is a very much needed element, and it has been. It won't always be. That's why we're going through a process of evolution now, where we're learning that we don't have to keep repeating that. But for a great deal in our history, we had to experience polarity and contrast in order to have that mirror, right? And to experience both sides of the same. So we can have the experience of one and then the other. And so we have those key people and points in history that really bring out that contrast and that polarity. And then we have certain individuals that are here to facilitate that experience. And like my story that I shared, these two individuals, these two very influential people on the planet that had such obvious roles here to fulfill with their North Node, with their soul intention and purpose here, to experience such darkness and such corruption and such polarity, and to represent that as well. This is a profound thing, and this is where we take astrology from being just a basic, like, what's going to happen in my week type of thing, to really look at this human journey and experience from a whole other perspective. So because my experience was so profound with it, I started basing my readings on this. This has always remained the central and key point of my sessions, is the nodes. Based on the nodes, I will revolve the rest of the study of a chart based on what the souls here do. So, throughout the years, I've looked to see what other astrologers have to say, how they use the nodes. I've briefly peeked into, Jeff Green. I think his way of using the nodes is fascinating as well. I've definitely learned a thing or two with him, and I am planning on really diving deeper into his course of evolutionary astrology. I think it's brilliant. He's definitely one of my all-time favorites in astrology. He just has so much material. Sometimes I'm like, where do I begin? But I will tell you that my use of the nodes, they are very specific because they really are based on this book primarily. I actually haven't opened this book in maybe over a year, but that's because I became so familiar with the interpretation of the lunar nodes after doing hundreds of readings for people, and really getting familiar with how the nodes work in people's charts firsthand, along with the basic heart and soul interpretation essence of this book. This is my secret to my readings, to my work. And so the North Node becomes that one point that is your North Star, This is at the end of the day, regardless of how many wives you have, regardless of how many children you have, regardless how many times you change your career and your work, as long as you're following that highest soul intention, you're on track. It's all good. A lot of times, life will conspire in ways, if it sees you living too much from your comfort zone, your south node, it'll kick you in the butt and you'll have what you call trials, challenges, tribulations. Because really what's happening is that your soul is like, dude, that's your comfort zone. You've already excelled at that. If you stay here, you're going to stagnate. This is not healthy for you. Yes, you're good at that. Yes, those things come naturally. Yes, it's okay to use it strategically sometimes, but only and as long as you are set on your north node. Use your masteries and your qualities from the south node consciously to achieve the balance of the north node, which is really where your soul is here to find growth. As long as you're doing that, you're fine. Okay? And I don't mean that you're never going to have challenges, but your challenges take on a different tonality. It's more of like the good problems to have. It's like the problems that come with growth that you're seeing in front of you. Like, okay, this is working. It's just like the growing pains, if you will. But if you live in your south node, you will stagnate and life will just keep going round and round in loops for you. And this is where you ask yourself, why do I repeat the same patterns? Why? It's the same thing again. Nobody loves me. Men suck. Women, like, no, it's you. You're living in the same pattern. You're recreating the same pattern. So it's really important to help people understand when they're living in their south node, because it's easy to do that without even realizing it. It can be our comfort zone. And it's dangerous if we stay there too long. They start bringing us trouble. They start bringing us the shadow polarity of that sign. So the north node becomes the soul intention. Because the north node is uncharted territory, because the north node is unknown, unfamiliar grounds, unfamiliar experiences of yourself, of life, this becomes a place where most people will run away from. This becomes their uncomfortable zone. The north node becomes the place, for the most part, where people have a hard time seeing, some people even accepting, like in my case. I had a very severe case of it. And other people, they will just have a hard time achieving it or experiencing it. For as much as they try, they feel like it's just so hard. Other people will feel like they really don't have the desire at all. Like, no way. Like, I can't do that. But this is the thing. If you can help people understand that they only feel like that because it's uncharted territory for them, but this is actually where the focus of their experience is supposed to be, this would make all the difference in someone's journey, especially if it's someone who is seeking the higher perspective. Now, for some people, the north node comes a little bit easier. This is seen by the chart. There are certain placements that allow people to process their soul intention here in a smoother way. But it is very, very common for me to see people that are well into their mid-years and even beyond that haven't even touched their north node yet. And this is a serious thing. This is a serious thing. This is a serious thing. When we don't live our north nodes, life stagnates. And so the north node becomes that point where we need to focus on at all costs. Obviously, you can temper it with the south node, but remember, it's primarily about the north node. It's about using your cycles and using what you have in your chart to work with always to take that next step in the direction of your north node. The house placement can also be seen by the same, let's say if you're looking at a north node in Cancer, well, what is the house that correlates with Cancer? It's the 4th house. So you just get the sign that correlates with the house. Let's say you have a north node in the 2nd house. The second house correlates with the sign of Taurus. So you can read the Taurus sign as well. I'd say primarily start with the sign. What's the sign placement of your North Node? Look at the sign and then look in this book and read that. Just that is going to give you all the information you need. Now, if you want to get a little more information, you can get the house that your North Node is in and look at the sign that correlates with it. And you'll see a lot of similarities as well. But the North Node becomes that point of focus in your life, that at the end of the day, as long as what you're doing is slowly but surely getting you to look in that direction and experience and express those attributes, I'm telling you, your life will be aligned with your next best step. There's no mystery around this. It's spectacular. And the amount of people that I've been able to help change their lives and touch them in such profound ways just based on this has been insane. And if you are someone who has had a natal chart reading with me, you know what I'm talking about. And this is how serious the lunar nodes are, and how serious it is that we know where our North Node is and what it is that our soul is intending by being here. Now, there's more to say about the North Node and South Node and different uses and different nuances and different flavors that we go adding to them. And I will talk more about that in upcoming courses where, we're going to add more in-depth look at the use of the nodes. But this is already so much information to get you started right now looking at people's charts. You'd be surprised to see where their soul is trying to find growth. And a lot of times it's not even really about a physical situation, as much as it is about the essence, the heart and soul of that essence, of the flavor of that sign. For example, let's say a North Node in Taurus, for example. A North Node in Taurus, these are people that are here with the sole purpose. Yes, we can instantaneously think money. They're here to experience money, to experience wealth. And yes, that could be the case. At their apex, I truly believe that that money will come as a consequence to them the more they continue to focus on their Taurus North Node. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, even more than experiencing wealth and money, this is about them experiencing a really profound shift in values. And this is so profound. I could go on and on for like 2 hours straight talking about that and how this can reflect in their relationships. Then, of course, I look at their Venus, the quality of their Venus, their 7th house, to see what their tendency for their patterns are, for example, to see if relationships is a source of helping them redefine their values or not. Sometimes it could be relating to women, right? Because Venus rules Taurus, Venus relates to women. It could relate to money as well. It could relate to beauty. It could relate to social activities. But when you know that at the heart and soul of that Taurus North Node is a redefining of their value system, or, for example, the North Node in the 2nd house as well. 2nd house correlates with the sign of Taurus. I can't tell you how many times I've read charts for people that, they're not any like super rich people or anything. As a matter of fact, they're usually average to not doing so good. But really, the essence and the heart and soul of that is that most people that I get with this nodal placement, they come here experiencing a very low sense of self-esteem. Now, this is usually in correlation to their stories as children. Usually has something to do with the mother as well. There are many different nuances and flavors that we can add to make the story. But at the end of the day, this is about a breakage, if you will, in how they perceive themselves and their own sense of worth, their own self-love, which in turn translates to a wounding in how they relate to material things or things that they value, which is really ultimately the soul is trying to redefine that and having them experience what it's like to have a whole and complete reflection of relationships, money, all those things that reflect back to them their set of values, their own sense of self-worth and self-love. So this is very profound. And then when you get someone start to work with, and you're like, oh yeah, it's about money, and you get someone, they're like, oh no, I don't really relate to that. But if you go to the heart and soul and the essence of what that house, what that sign represents, and start from there and work your way from there, it'll touch people in a much more profound way. And this is why I recommend this book. You know, I'm not so much into the cookbook stuff. Oh yeah, second house, Taurus represents relationship, represents money. Okay, yeah, sure. But those are all just little branches, the tip of the iceberg. What is the heart and soul of the iceberg here? What's really going on at the end of the day? This is a soul direction. The soul doesn't care about how many women or how many relationships or how much money you have. Those are all scenarios that we create. They're all reflections that we create as mirrors, as an extension of an emotion, of an experience that we're having. And when you get the essence of that, your readings are going to make so much more sense. So the North Node becomes that power point of your soul's direction. And it's imperative to understand what your North Node is saying. Are there any planets conjunct the North Node? Even asteroids. I look even at the main asteroids, Ceres, Vesta, Pallas Athena, and what was the other one? Ceres and Juno. The 4 asteroids. I look at that. I look at Black Moon Lilith as well. I look at the vertex point as well. Anything significant in astrology conjunct the North Node, include it, because it's a part of your soul direction, and it's an ally that you have. It's a tool that you have to help you there. There's something about the quality of that planet that is meant to be alongside you in that as you experience that. The house that that planet rules, if it's Mars, for example, together with your soul direction, it's bringing more information into the story. Okay? What else? So yeah, planets conjunct the North Node. Points, if it's close to an angle as well, your North Node becomes extremely important. It's close to the midheaven, the ascendant, the IC, the bottom of the chart, and the descendant. Very significant. There's a lot of emphasis on your soul intention of being here. A lot of significance. Another thing for advanced astrologers, look at the ruler of your North Node and South Node. They're going to add more information. So if you have, again, let's say you have that South Node in Aries and that North Node in Libra, you're going to look at Mars to give you more information about your past lives, your masteries and all that. Where is Mars in your chart? Is it conjunct any other planets? What sign is it in? What story is it saying in your chart? It's in connection with your past lives, with your South Node. And what is the ruler of your, let's say your North Node in Libra? Venus. Wherever Venus is in your chart, if it's together with other planets, if whatever it's doing, it's adding information about your soul direction and your soul purpose. Very important. And finally, it's been a long class. I know this topic is very dear to my heart, and it's very important as well. I don't want to cut corners here with this one. But finally, I'm going to talk about the transiting nodes. So for the natal nodes, the natal lunar nodes, your natal chart, I am recommending that you get this book over here, Jan Spiller, Astrology for the Soul. This is a book that every astrologer should have. And start with your own sign to understand a little bit about where you're coming from, past lives, and where you're going, where you're meant to be heading as a soul. And at the end of the day, this doesn't even really have so much to do with physical events as much as it has to do with an alignment of soul, of awareness. So it doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to marry this person or that one, even though many times it actually does help align us better. But it's even more about an internal process that we go through of experiencing the qualities of that sign. Very, very, very important. And then start branching into people close to you, your family, your friends, your loved ones, and start using their charts to understand more about the nodal placements, whether you decide to share with them or not. If they're not open to it, I would suggest that you don't do it, not with this over here. This is something this is not a point of convincing people or arguing with them. Okay, it is what it is. And some people are ready to hear it and to open themselves to this, and others aren't. And don't force this on anybody. If the person is not ready to hear it, they're not ready to hear it. Talk with people that you know are open to this and that are open to the fact that there is significance in their journey here, that it's not random, that there is a higher order of things here, and there is a soul intelligence in this cosmic digital world, whatever we have going on here. There is, things don't happen by chance or coincidence. There is a rhyme and reason, and what I like to call the soul's agenda, if you will, the soul's intention for being here. So that would be the second thing. Look at other people's charts, start getting familiar with how this works. Now, we have the transiting nodes, which is, remember we talked about how these points in the sky, they also move, right? They're not always still, they move because everything in the solar system is moving. And so based on the moon's movement, the Earth's orbit movement, all of that, these points move as well. And so we call them the transiting nodes. The transiting nodes in the sky are where those points are today in the sky for everybody. The same way we talk about transiting Mars, transiting Uranus, transiting Mercury. We also have the transiting North Node and South Node. Now, they take on sort of like kind of the same meaning, but more collectively. So they are also pointing to, the past and the future. But there are more of like collective themes that we are working with here as we collectively go through our evolutionary process as well. Okay, so this pertains more to like the collective theme for the year. Now, the transiting nodes, the South Node and the North Node, they, like we said, they spend about 18 months in every sign. That means that about every 18 months, they change signs. So what happens is that when they change signs, they change the collective filter of focus for about a year and a half. Now, where it becomes individual is that it will be in a different house for everybody. So for example, right now, as I record this video, we are getting ready for the North Node, the transiting North Node, to enter Gemini. Now, the sign is going to be collective for everybody for 18 months, Gemini. But where this is going to be individual for you is that everybody has Gemini in a different house of the chart. So let's see if I can get my wheel here to show you what I mean. So here we have, I still have my notes from the from the last video I did. I'll just leave it for now. But we have Gemini. Here we have the house of Gemini. The transiting North Node right now is getting ready to leave Cancer and enter Gemini. Oh, and by the way, the nodes, they travel the opposite direction of the rest of the planets, okay? I forgot to say this is really important. I know this is something obvious for a lot of people, but for others it isn't. And it's important to know that the planets in astrology, they all travel this way, which is counterclockwise, okay? They travel from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer, everything in the solar system revolves this way. But the lunar nodes, they travel backwards. They travel backwards here. So right now, the North Node is in Cancer, and it's entering Gemini, where it's going to stay for 1.5 years, and then it's going to enter Taurus. Right off the bat, I know that the people that were born with the North Node in Gemini, within this next year and a half, are going to experience their nodal return. Remember, we talked about that. That's a very significant time of the person's life. Wherever the North Node is at in the sky, the transiting node, so right now it's wrapping up its business in Cancer. It's been in Cancer for the last year and a half, for the last year for sure. And the people that were born with the North Node in Cancer are having their nodal return. And the people that have their South Node in Cancer are having the reverse nodal return. Remember, we talked about that 9-year split in the middle where the soul just has that rearrangement of sorts to realign. It can be a very tumultuous time of the person's life, a lot of activities, a lot of comings and goings. Well, when the North Node enters Gemini, everybody who has the North Node in their natal chart in Gemini will experience a nodal return sometime during this year and a half. Depends on what degree it's in. Then it's going to be Taurus, same thing. Everybody that was born with the North Node in Taurus is going to have their nodal return. And again, you can refer to the beginning of this talk for what that means. Okay, so with the transiting node entering the sign of Gemini, this is going to be collective for everybody. But everybody's going to have Gemini in a different place of their chart. For some people, Gemini is going to be in their 7th house of relationships. Other people, it's going to be in their 8th house of tribulations and transformation and rebirth and deep experiences in life. For some people, Gemini is going to be in the 9th house. The 9th house of higher education, of higher learning, of other cultures, of publishing and broadcasting and travel and expansion of the mind. Other people, Gemini is going to be in their 10th house of work, of career. And so as the nodes, as the North Node goes from house to house, depending on what your chart looks like, this is triggering and activating that the qualities of that house for you are coming to life for that year or year and a half for you. In other words, there is something for you to experience with that house. Okay, let's say it's the 10th house. Let's say you have Gemini in the 10th house, okay? So let's put, here you go. Let's say you have Gemini in the 10th house. And the transiting North Node leaves Cancer and enters the 10th house for you, which is where Gemini is in your chart, for example. That means that the collective soul direction wants you to focus on experiences specifically pertaining to your 10th house, because for whatever reason, there's experiences there that are going to bring you closer to your soul intention. Now, these may very well have to do with physical things, with people, with situations, with events, but primarily, this is an experience of the soul. So this is way above and beyond. You know, let's say that the North Node goes in the 10th house, and for whatever reason, you actually get fired from your job. You're like, oh my God, what's happening? Well, you know that there is something there from your soul that needs you to experience something there relating to that work, career, profession. And then at the end of the day, you figure out that there's actually something that you've been wanting to do all your life, and now is your chance to do it. And when you start doing it because you have no other excuse, you have no other job, you have nothing else taking up your time, and you start focusing on what it is that you love, and you launch that as your focal point of career and work, for example, this is a very small example, this starts to bring you such incredible satisfaction because you are aligned with your soul intention of experiencing your own authority in this world. And ultimately, that's what the 10th house is. Sometimes, many times for many people, a professional, corporate job actually diminishes your sense of authority. You're working for someone else. You're making someone else's product shine. You're helping someone else achieve their goals and their dreams. And you know what I mean? Whereas you have something to offer too. And so with the North Node transiting your 10th house, there could be a significant focus. Maybe it's a promotion. Maybe you're doing well in your work and your job, and hey, maybe the universe says now it's time for you to get a raise and become even more prominent in this company and become more recognized, right? The authority, the recognition of the 10th house. So there are many different ways this could play out, and this all has to do with the rest of the alignments of your chart. But there is an experience with the 10th house that your soul is seeking growth through. So understanding where the transiting nodes, especially the North Node, because it's the moving forward part, this is really at the end of the day what we have to be focusing on. Understanding what sign the transiting North Node is in for any period of a year and a half. And then knowing which house that falls in your chart is very important to understanding the overall cycle that you are going through for this year. This is a fantastic way of working with cycles in astrology. You know how I always talk about working with cycles? Well, this is a fantastic example, because when you get the cycle of the transiting node, and you know that the transiting node will last about 18 months in one sign, you know that for at least a solid year, you have a massive spotlight, a focus of the cosmic collective soul direction aligning for you in a very specific area of your life. And at the end of the day, even the other mini cycles, the new moons, the full moons, the solar returns, all those other things, they all really just fall under the category of where the North Node is for you at that moment in your life. And that is a part of a bigger cycle that at the end of the day has the final say. So I like to work a lot, for example, when I have to make big decisions in my life and I don't know if I choose that or this, and I need clarity. I look a lot to see which house the North Node is in for me right now. The transiting North Node, as well as the solar return, which house is it in for me? Because that house is carrying so much significance in the overall direction of my choices that year. At the end of the day, I know it's like the yes sir captain type of, it's that part of you, that part of your soul that just knows best, and you have to trust, because you only have a limited perception here for a reason. Okay, it's one and the same, but the North Node is that point in astrology that points to just trust. It's this way. And then based on that, you can make your decisions and expect your other cycles and so forth. So this was a very powerful and power-packed astrology class on the nodes. And since I'm leaving you with the North Node and South Node natal interpretation, I'm going to let you get from here. Even though I did give you a very good overview of what it means, but through the signs and the houses, you're going to get it through here. And then the transiting nodes, I am including with this class a special gift, which is an audio recording that I've done about the transiting nodes through all the 12 houses. Now, this audio is so powerful, and I want to explain to you that you can listen to this at any time of the year, any time of your life, because it doesn't matter what sign it's in. The sign it's in, it's a collective theme for about a year and a half. And this is going to change every 18 months. And there's going to be a lot of astrologers talking about the sign and what it means. I also talk extensively about it. I've been talking about the Capricorn Cancer axis, which is where we have it now. Right now, we're going to start shifting to the Gemini Sagittarius axis. So I'm going to talk extensively about that as well. And other astrologers have their interpretation as well, which really adds a lot of value to understanding the transiting nodes. But where it becomes personalized to you is where that North and South node is in your chart, which houses it's in for you. So the North Node is going to be at some point, let's say Gemini, the North Node is going to be in Gemini in the 10th house for you, and the South Node is always going to be opposite in the 4th house. And that means something too. So the South Node, the transiting South Node, is a point where we are learning how to grow beyond. Okay, a lot of things that come through the South Node, they can be karmic in nature. These can be experiences with people or even patterns that we've already had in the past. There can be a lot of familiar territory here, even masteries. Okay, I've seen a lot of good things come through the South Node as well, but these are almost like rewards that we've earned in past lives, or just like, okay, I've concluded the cycle now. I have this predestined or whatever fated reward or something. Someone comes into your life at a significant part of your life that belongs to some sort of a contract or an agreement that you have as a soul. This can happen a lot through the South Node as well. But the South Node is, primarily speaking, a point where we're just like, we've experienced a lot of growth, and for whatever reason, we're learning how to find the balance through the polarity of the North Node, which is generally that uncharted, unfamiliar territory. So this audio that I'm including here is going to cover the South Node and the North Node through all the 12 houses. So you will find the interpretation for your chart of the transiting nodes, not the natal North Node and South Node, the transiting, the ones that move, for whatever time of your life that you want. And you're just going to find out, all you have to find out is where they are at that moment. It's really easy to find online. I don't know, people are going to be watching this video at many different times. So it depends when you're watching this. You can easily find out just by typing and searching in the internet, transiting North Node, transiting South Node. Make sure the date is correct with your date, and you're going to see the sign that they're in right off the bat. Easy information to find. And then you're going to look in your chart and you're going to see where that sign is in your chart, which house it's in. And you're going to listen to that axis. And we call an axis the two polarities of the houses. For example, the 10th and the 4th house. It's a polarity. It's an axis. Okay. The 5th house and the 11th house. It's another polarity. It's another axis. So you're going to look for your axis, and the audio is divided between the axis. You're going to listen to yours, have an understanding of your greater cycle in this year, understand what the general theme is for your soul's intention that is working together with the collective cosmic intention. Remember, it's a transiting, so everyone is experiencing this to a certain extent. So it's how does it fit with the greater whole? Now it's time for you to focus on this. And then I'm going to invite you to also listen to your friends, your families, close people, loved ones. See how much you can actually correlate with the experiences that they're having in their life right now. You're going to be surprised to see how much of it actually makes sense. And even situations that you could possibly help them with, counseling, or you don't even necessarily have to say it's based on astrology, but you can help to counsel them if they come to you asking for help, because you understand part of the greater cycle that they're in based on their soul's intention, in that phase, that cycle of the soul intention. So there you have a very powerful and comprehensive look at the nodes, the lunar nodes in astrology. It is my hope and intention that with this class, you are able to understand the power that astrology has to influence and to really help align us with our soul direction. And when I say to influence us with our soul direction, I mean influence as far as like this is all about how much you're ready to recognize and be open to this. Because some people aren't ready. I've tried to talk to people that don't even believe in astrology, as some people say, right? As if it's a belief, as if it's a religion. It's not about, I always say, this is astrology. There's nothing to believe in astrology. There's only to understand. So either you understand astrology or you don't. There is no such thing as I believe or don't believe in astrology. So there are certain people that are not ready to understand astrology yet, and that's okay. But the people who are, and the people that know that they're here for more, these are the people that are ready to understand the significance of the lunar nodes in their natal chart and in their transits as well. This difference can completely change your life the way it did with mine, especially after reading this, and it will add a whole new level of depth and meaning to your sessions, to your practice, to your chart analysis. So thank you for listening to this powerful talk and for just opening space for me to share this with you. I surely intend to share a lot more go more in depth because there's a lot more to add to this beautiful, beautiful part of astrology. Thank you again. I'm Raquel Spring, and I'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.
Y entonces, ya, gracias. Sí.